Good morning and welcome to the Team Idris channel Lathe Philosophy. So this is a quick vid about how you have additive manufacture where you build things up and sort of traditional chiseling away, machining away metal to make something, and how you can cheat a fair bit and mix the two. So here's the component I'm trying to replicate, which is a very smashed up roller from a sander I paid 20 quid for, and it's basically gone brittle, so it's broken in here. The bearing is completely broken out of here, and the whole thing has got a big old split in it. So yeah, that wouldn't run at all. So it's about 60 mil, so I figured I could make a new one and learn something about my lathe. The only 60 mil tube I've got is this absolutely disgusting piece of tube I bought back in the early 90s for the race truck, and I've been using it for a ground spike for ages. So I've cut out a section of it and machined it down. Here's the original bit, the spiky bit that was hammered into the ground as an anchor for the garden crane. So I've tried to bring it back, and the trouble with rust is that it's not rust on metal, it's rust where metal used to be. So what was a 60 mil tube with a 5 mil wall is a lot smaller. So I tried to make the tube do what I wanted to do, but it just hadn't got the strength in it. So once I've got it basically cleaned with a stone inside and machined roughly on the outside, I then wrapped that 2.5 mil wire around some scaffolding tube as a spacer between this and this part, so that I could put a run of MIG weld around the outside and join the two together. That worked a lot better, because I tried making a jig cap to go in the end. Just grab that, there's the jig cap. So the idea is that you clamp the metal in the vise one end, put the cap in the other, and hold it up with the tailstock. And it kind of works, but you're still reliant on the fact that the chuck is right here and there's no flex in the tailstock here. So it kind of worked, kind of didn't, but very useful part to have anyway. I'm sure I'll be using that later. So the nice thing about the scaffolding tube is that after a quick sand off, this is a piece of my old race truck, I can mark on here where the logo is on the chuck and always return to that spot. So here's the lines between the jaws and here's the line between the back of the chuck. So if I put that back in, then I know I'm round. So I've done a bit of a test machine on the end. This will be getting cut off because it's sort of longer than the roller anyway, so it needs to be cut off here and here. Up the inside, I ran the boring bar, and a really strong boring bar is great because both of these tubes are folded up and then welded, so there's like a weld on the inside. So I was able to get that right up inside there, and that's now concentrically round all the way up the inside. And because it's got a sanding belt around it, there's a slight angle on it. So I've managed to replicate that with the compound slide, with it firmly held there. So that worked in really well. I've now got a rusty old piece of metal that's plenty good enough to run a belt on. I mean, the fact that there's rubbish here isn't going to matter. But what it really needs to be is round. So the next problem I had is that I need to make some bearings to fit up the inside. And I hit the same problem with the inaccuracy of the chuck. If I make this as one part like that, I have to, at some point I've got to bore in here with a smaller boring tool after drilling it, and then I've got to flip it. And as soon as I've flipped it, I've kind of lost the roundness of the thing. So I decided to make two separate ones. It doesn't really make any difference to it. It just means that I machined one of them with the bar into the chuck. I know that this outside and this inside face, they're all concentric to each other. I part it off, that's one bearing done. I then come onto it and machine the next one with the same outside surface, just left alone, and machine in there. I then know that this bearing is accurate to the outside of that, as in it's not doing this when it's running as a roller. Then when I load both of them into this scaffolding tube, I know that they're both right. because I've been down with the boring tool and I've skimmed this at the same time, this main surface here and the 1 degree runoffs here. So that's absolutely accurate. Another advantage popped up later on is that this part has these circlips in it. One goes here and one goes there. So if you were going to make this in one part, you would have to make sure that you bored into the end here, not just the right diameter for the bearing, but also the perfect distance to make this clip line up here and that one there without the bearings moving around. By doing it this way, I've now got the advantage that as long as I make them too long, I can machine this surface down and this one down until they come out the right distance. And that's my next job, to skim these back off until they're right. I can then cheat and go completely this century and Loctite them into the inside of this tube. There's no real reason for them to, they're not taking a lot of load. I mean, they only need to be held in there to guide them. So Loctite will hold them in there fine. And if this part, these parts are concentric, this part is concentric with that one, once they're glued in as a slight slide fit, that should work great. And then because it's a sander, this pin is adjusted left and right to push the belt one way or the other way to keep it central on the machine. And that was the problem with this plastic roller. With it being smashed up, the belt just jammed on the side and jammed the motor. That's its adjustment springs there. This is the one that keeps the belt loaded. This is the one that screws into the end of here and just keeps it pushed over. So the other bit I'd like to just quickly talk about is interference fit versus a slide fit. Now in a perfect world you'd have these such a great fit that they pushed in here and you just pushed them with a press till exactly the right point and everything's great. In reality, if you get them slightly wrong, you can move them around a bit, let the glue go off and it's got them. The other same thing goes for the bearings here. Between machining one and machining the other one, I had to go 4/100ths difference on the hand wheel to make these bearings a sort of light hammer fit, slide fit. But there's always this thing of the tool marks on the inside. Unless you've got a very, very good round-ended tool, you will always have machining marks on the inside, which will change the way these bearings fit. But as long as they aren't a push-out fit or falling out, and they are a light hammer fit, the only reason I'd say avoiding, possibly go for a slight Loctite fit rather than a hammer fit, is if you hammer them half in and get them completely stuck, you then got to smash them back out again and you risk ruining the bearing. While you've got the bearings in bits, it always makes sense to just very, very carefully flip the seal out and re-grease them. But there's another advantage of them being in two halves while you're working on them. It's easy to get a punch down the inside and knock that bearing through. So, yeah, roller for my sander that I paid 20 quid for and spent way too much time fixing it. But I am learning about my lathe, and while I'm working the lathe, I'm fixing problems with it as they come up. So it's a good exercise, even if I had to throw it in the bin, and I think it's going to work. Anyway, thanks for watching. Grab us next time.